Welcome to this week's edition of More Insights and Strategy, the Enterprise App Podcast. So we're on episode 6. I'm Robert Kramer with Melanie Brew, both VPs and principal analysts here at More Insights and Strategy. I cover ERP and enterprise data. Mel covers modern work, HCM, CX, CRM, and all the other things that we might delve into. We're here to talk a little bit about Adobe. Mel was there last week. Supply chain risk, Google's acquisition of Wiz, Oracle agents, and Microsoft. So before we get started, let's start with a disclaimer. The show is for information and entertainment purposes only. While we will discuss publicly traded companies on this show, its content should not be taken as investment advice. So let's get started a little bit. Mel, how you been? And we haven't done a show in a couple of weeks. We've had a lot going on with personal and business, and I know you just came from a couple different events. How's it going?
Yes, it's going really well. I just got back last night from New York. I was with IBM there, and I can't tell you anything about that yet. Little teaser, but we'll be able to talk about that in a week or so. But great event. And prior to that, I've been on like 6 planes in the last 10 days. Part of it was fun. I went to Mexico for a couple of days with my son for spring break. But before that, I was at Adobe Summit, and Adobe Summit it's just so, like, I really love. I think you went a couple of years ago.
Yep.
It's so fun. There's just always there's so much going on. Tons of different announcements. A lot of customers there. Really kind of get like this big kind of overall view of like the challenges that people are facing in the industry. And I think right now the biggest challenge is just demand for content, right? So, and that's just driven through personalization. Like every single CMO, chief digital officer, CIO that you talk to at Summit is like, we need this like massive problem, or need to solve this massive problem, which is being able to create content at scale that's personalized and be able to do it like quickly, right? Like it's not easy to do, and without sacrificing quality. So I did a really great interview, and that
I saw that. It was fantastic.
It was great. It was fun. So I did that with Varun Parmar, who's the general manager of Adobe GenStudio and Firefly Enterprise. So we talked about scaling content with Adobe GenStudio for performance marketing, Firefly services, and Adobe Express. So kind of how that's sort of woven together throughout the enterprise. But I think, just in general, there was a lot of focus on B2B growth. There was a lot of focus on their strategic partnerships. But I would say like the key themes throughout Summit is just the role of AI in scaling personalization, optimizing customer journeys, and enhancing creativity. And I think one thing that Adobe has done really well over the last couple of years with weaving AI through all of their whole ecosystem is giving kind of like, and I don't like the word democratization because it's overused, but democratizing the use of these tools for marketers, non-creative marketers, while continuing to really be a creative tool for creatives who want to still have that control, that creative control, and be artists. We forget that these people are artists, and AI isn't taking that away from them. And I think like the first iteration of Firefly, there was a lot of things that it sort of did for you. And they continue to add ways that, layering and generative fill and all of the ways that you can continue to tweak like aperture. I mean, all of these things where you really can, even if you start with a template or create your own template, you're still able to make this creative work your own. But then people within your organization are able to use it so that you're not creating hundreds, if not thousands of assets. So we saw some great use cases of companies that are able to do in a day what used to take them 5 weeks to do, or they're able to
Right.
do in 2 weeks what used to take them 6 months to do. So it's really nice to start to see. I think we're seeing time savings ROI for sure. I don't know that we're really seeing the monetary ROI quite yet. I'm sure these organizations are seeing it, and they're seeing, sort of the people savings, like whether, these people now have more time to spend on other things, or it's almost like getting extra teammates, right?
Yep.
And there's definitely, I didn't get the sense that there's this like, this panic of like, oh, are we going to replace people? It's not like that at all. It's more just that you get more out of what people can do in a day. And there's less risk, right? Because I mean, one of the other things that Adobe has done really well is that they generate content that's safe for commercial use. On top of that, they're able to lock down these assets so that people in other regions, in other departments, some place that the creative team may not even touch, they can tweak the creative content for their usage without having to go through every single iteration has to be approved. So I think it's saving a lot of time and effort and probably cognitive load in that sense. So
Yeah.
it was a great event, and I'll have a write up on it when I have time to take more than one breath at a time. And
It's not,
yeah,
I like their emphasis that it seemed like there was on data and real-time data and data
hmm
analytics and empowering the people to use AI
yes,
agents a little bit more. So I think the quality that, like you said, is super important. So the data needs to be of high quality so you can take advantage of all these things. And their AI agent suite, it looks like they released a number of agents to help automate various marketing tasks. So I mean, when we were in marketing, it seemed like a lot of it was manual. So of
yes.
these tools are real helpful to really move things along. Like you said, it's all about being efficient, and this is another example of how Adobe's allowing these companies to be more efficient without an enormous amount of manual work that we went through as marketing people.
For sure. And I think, on especially on the B2B side, the data is becoming more and more connected. It's not entirely there yet, but, like you said, when we were, pure marketers, that business intelligence was so siloed, and we
Right.
had to go dig it out, and because somebody had to give us a report. Now it's being built into like the performance marketing tools, so you can actually connect that data. It's not entirely there yet, but it's getting there, and it's that will be a game changer when it's actually really useful. So
Well,
anyway,
good.
we got a couple more topics to move on to, and you had a webinar on managing supply chain risk that you did. Um,
Yep, I did
so,
that a couple days ago, and it was with a company called Source Day, and we talked a little bit about this, really the state of supply chain volatility that's going on in the world, and really, how did we get here? Did we always have this volatility, or is the software just more advanced to allow us to be more resilient? Because maybe the pandemic turned over some rocks to show us that we needed to take advantage of software so we understand the volatility, the disruptions. But there's a lot of things that are constantly going on. Like for instance, these tariffs that are constantly being discussed, and how do those impact manufacturers and distributors, and what software can be used to enable these companies to advance. So I'm seeing an enormous spend and a push towards modernization of these companies because they have to take advantage of this technology to be more resilient.
mhm,
Just a couple of them. Why you want this is you want to forecast what tariffs, the impact that they might have on your supply chain. It could be from a pricing perspective. It could be from the way that you move your goods throughout. It could be your supply chain visibility to identify which are your best suppliers. I think suppliers are a gigantic key because you want to choose
mhm.
the best ones that match what you're looking for.
Mhm.
There's a lot of advances with AI within this whole area, how AI can do predictive maintenance or predictive uh, supply chain uh, disruptions, and how they can actually help your supplier management systems and all of the things that you're doing. But I'll pause there. I don't go too far, but this webinar that I was on goes through all of this and talks about what technologies that you need to use to navigate to help with the impact of a lot of these disruptions. Because I think when we went through some of these past disruptions, we thought we were um, through the weeds, but I think it's always going to be happening, and I think companies need to be prepared no matter what. And I think modernization and technology that's available is one of the keys for getting through this. But what are
Mhm.
your thoughts?
I think it's interesting because as we look at how much things are personalized, and obviously it's the data that feeds that personalization for the customer, I would think that, the on the supply chain side, things have to be able to pivot really quickly. Like
Mhm.
if, all of a sudden, let's take a retail example. Pink is trending really like, we got to change everything to pink, like you got to be able to change to consumer demands and that data that informs those preferences, right?
Good point.
So,
Yeah, it's also the inventory control to make sure that you're using, a system that's going beyond mins and maxes and just in time to based on supply, demand, cross sell, and using AI to predict what inventory levels you should have, and then the movement of those goods and services to understand what alternative routes or suppliers that you could use to minimize tariff costs.
mhm,
And I think the supplier network is a big gain to be able to use AI with, because it allows you to pick the right vendor if there's a problem based upon all the circumstances that I just talked about. But I do think that this is a way to decrease costs, because the manufacturing market in some industries can be somewhat flat based upon the global economy and tariffs, et cetera. So this is a way to control costs a little bit better. And companies that haven't modernized in this area can go through this, and this is a great way to get started. But you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it in an agile format, that you're
mhm.
taking your existing ERP, whether it's legacy or not, and then your supply chain can be more modern. That way, you're moving things forward and trying to eliminate costs and gaps that you might currently have. Anyway, um,
Good stuff. Well, the webinar is linked in our show notes, so you can watch the
yes,
whole thing. So this is I wouldn't say old news because it's ongoing, but we haven't talked about it yet. So the Google Wiz acquisition. This was sort of like a start, stop, start again.
I know. Isn't that interesting? I think it's one of those acquisitions that was a necessity for Google. It brings a lot of different capabilities that Google is really needed from a security standpoint to be more comparable to their competitors like Microsoft and AWS. It gives them an agentless platform, a more a cloud agnostic platform, and it gives them a heavier security with a stronger UI than they currently have. So we'll have
Mhm.
to get a little bit more into the detail, but I think me and you have talked about it. Wiz is not a large company. I think I read that they had about 500 million in sales for last year. That might be at its peak, and they're getting bought for 32 billion. So it's a heck of a deal um, for Wiz, but I'm sure that Google sees the strength in the cloud security offerings that they're buying in the multi-cloud that they're getting out of it. And really, one of the big things is the AI security that's embedded within Wiz to better compete with the companies that I just mentioned. So I think this is probably obviously a win, and we'll just have to stay tuned and see how it goes. But they have a large customer base that Wiz has; those will come over, and they have a large set of engineers as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I was trying to find who wrote this because I want to give credit where credit's due, and I feel like it was maybe TechCrunch, but I read a really interesting article that was like the writing was on the wall. When Wiz originally said that they were backing out of the deal and that they were going to IPO, and they had pointed out some interesting facts. One of which was that they hired a CFO who had never taken a company public before. And so like that should have been a good clue that they were actually not going to IPO and that these conversations were continuing, that there was going to be an acquisition. And there were some other things that were pointed out in there that were first very, very interesting observations, I thought. But yeah,
That is interesting. Sounds like they were preparing all along to be acquired, and they just didn't do it the first time. But
and they're the biggest deal Google's ever done in an acquisition. I mean, that's a
wow.
huge amount of money.
And it goes real well with the company that Google previously bought, two of them actually, which was Mandiant, which is for incident response, and then Chronicle for security analytics. So this kind of fills the void for native, cloud native protection security app. That they will all kind of go together. They have more of an end-to-end security with this putting those three companies together within Google. But let's continue. And we've always talked about AI and AI agents, but Oracle's released recently AI Agent Studio, which allows you to build your own agents that will be an addition to their Fusion Cloud apps. So it remains to be seen what the charges, if any, because they say there's no charge for this app. But as far as actually executing those agents within different apps. I think it will depend upon which app it is, but it looks like there's about 50 prepackaged agents, and this goes along with what a lot of other companies are doing to have agents be within your embedded uh, actions of transactions within, say, like ERP or CRM to actually do tasks for the strategic person who needs those tasks done to make better decisions. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that is no additional cost to Oracle Fusion application customers and partners. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to see stuff like this, like pretty much everywhere where agents are being deployed. But this is really, I think, what they're creating here is just an easy to use tools for creating customized AI agents for, just for productivity and automation. But there is a lot of, I think, what the kind of one standout thing here is that it includes a lot of like testing and validation and built-in security with these agents. So they're able to kind of like tweak them for almost like a performance review. You can like test it and deploy it and then tweak it based on its performance. So this just aligns with the broader strategy to leverage AI agents across its applications. And really, this is like building this kind of digital workforce. So I think what we're going to see is, what is yet to be seen is, how are these workforces going to be managed, these digital workforces? And will we get to the point where every person has their own agent? Do these agents belong to the company or to the individual? If I leave the company, do I take my agent that I've built with me? Is that my own intellectual property, or does it belong to the company? There's so many questions, I think, that remain to be seen with this
And cost.
digital workforce, right? And so I think this helps a lot, I think, with AI adoption. And I think one of the big issues with AI adoption is just getting it into people's hands. So if
Yep.
people can easily build, deploy, test, tweak these agents in their applications, in the places where they're already using AI, using these applications, like, in, like, let's say, an HR environment or an HCM environment, they're already doing these tasks every single day, that for them to automate these things and then be able to test it, it's not like a real big unknown. They'll know whether it's working or it's not. And so that environment of being able to deploy and test and tweak, I think is a great way to get these things deployed and out there and working. And then
And
there are
training.
in training. And yes, and then, I think one of the biggest things with AI adoption is that people are going to have to be champions within an organization.
Yeah.
There is still a major fear in many organizations of using AI, whether it's going to replace people or it's going to be wrong, or there's safety risks, there's security risks. If people can get these AI agents through something like Oracle AI Agent Studio in their hands, use it, deploy it, and it works, those people can be champions for that within an organization, and they can, kind of proliferate that throughout the organization. So
Totally agree.
hopefully that will have some impact on that. And
Okay. Well,
they won't be replacing people.
we don't want that to happen. We want them to be used together strategically to make
Yeah.
more efficiently operations run better.
Yes. Yes.
Do we have any more topics, or we
We
gonna?
do. We have one. Wait, I gotta switch our thing. So speaking of agents, and this is definitely one we don't want to replace people, because Microsoft just announced some reasoning agents in Microsoft 365 Copilot. They are researcher and analyst. So researcher is a combination of OpenAI's deep research model with Microsoft 365 Copilot's advanced orchestration and deep search capabilities. That's a mouthful. So these are really like to perform more complex analysis. So this, like, they can perform, or they say they can perform, go-to-market strategy, identify like white space opportunities. And then there's one that's called analyst. So we actually, one of our own analysts made a joke about like, well, I hope I'm not out of a job. I don't think that they're going to replace us anytime soon, but it uses this like chain of thought reasoning to progress through problems. So Microsoft says that it can provide like high quality answers that mirror human analytical thinking. I just think, this is 2 days old, this news, and I've been on the road, so I haven't really had a chance to dig deep into this. So, of course, we'll all have our hands on it, and we'll give a more thoughtful analysis of this, or maybe we'll see their Copilot analysis versus ours. But
Yep.
I do think these reasoning agents, they're very sophisticated. But you do always have to reconsider like the fact that there is this emotional intelligence that doesn't exist within these agents that humans are going to win out
That's
on.
a big key, because we like that intuition, or that experience factor versus a black and white answer can
Right.
be the wrong decision. So
And I
I
think
think
the
there's more to come on this
creativity,
one.
and I think also just sort of the overall awareness. So I think these models can be extremely intelligent, but they're intelligent on what they're trained on.
Yeah,
And there might be context, including experience, that they're not trained on. So, you may have an experience from something that happened in a former job or in life that an AI model isn't going to have. And so to bring that context into your own reasoning, it may be something you learned from your grandpa. Who knows? Like you never know where this, that's where like the innately human side of things is still going to always, I think, have value. But
great.
but I do love, seeing kind of the advancing of these models and what they can do, and it's super interesting. Um, and again, more where that came from, and we'll certainly get more on both of those in the next couple of weeks. We'll be at the Oracle Application Analyst Summit in a couple of weeks, and there's
I have a bunch coming up. I have Infor ERP coming up. I have Google Next. I have Oracle, like you said. So I'll look forward to see you there.
yeah,
And it's going to be a busy April and May for me, especially. I have probably about at least a half a dozen, 7 different events.
There's a
So
lot. Yeah. It's so funny when you start to talk about that. I'm like, I've got to even just look at my calendar to know what's happening there. But yeah, I'll be at Canva Create. That's always a fun one. Atlassian Team 25 that I'm doing digitally because it overlaps with something. But then we'll be at Oracle. There's ServiceNow, Knowledge. I know there's IBM Think, which some of our team is going to be at. That
yep, I'll be
overlaps
there.
with some stuff. So we've got some divide and conquer with our team
Yep,
over the next couple of weeks. So,
which
but
is
yeah,
great.
I think one of the things that we haven't really talked about, we've talked about like, yeah, follow us on Twitter or I always say Twitter, sorry, X or
X.
LinkedIn to get kind of more up to date stuff. But also, we do have a weekly analyst insights that goes out. So if you miss our podcast or we skip one week or whatever, look for the More Insights and Strategy LinkedIn post for the weekly analyst insights. You can also subscribe on our website. So with that, we will wrap up. This was great. Glad to see you. It's been
Thank
a
you.
while.
Pleasure.
And thank you to all who have joined us. And like I said, if you like what you saw, please leave us any like comments, chats. Tell us what you want to hear about next. Follow us on X and LinkedIn. And we will
Well said.
see you the next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.